One. Welcome back to the podcast, ladies and gentlemen. I've got a beautiful guest with me that I've been trying to meet up for a while, actually, in
Yes.
person, but we've just met, I guess, officially through the beautiful use of technology. Lilly Anjuli, qualified counselor with a bachelor in psychology and a diploma in counseling. What I'm really interested in, what I'm loving about getting to know this girl through social media is she specializes in all styles of relationship structures, monogamous, poly, open, throuple, and everything in between. And I'm really looking forward to it because I've had an incredible journey myself in this area, but it's been all self-taught and it's been all self-learned. And I'm really looking forward to hearing your story, Lily, and every all the value you've got to add. So for the listeners joining in, please welcome the beautiful Lilly Anjuli. Thank you for having me today.
Yes. Thank you for having me. It's so nice to actually officially meet you. So it's going to be great. This
I'm
is going
looking
to be a
forward.
good topic.
I'm looking forward to chatting. And I guess pre-warning for the guys listening, this could go for a long time. We both love chatting from what I've gathered, and there's so much in this topic that we're about to dive into because there's so much, I guess, stigma. There's so many,
Mm,
I guess, lack of clarity in people's perspectives and the reality of it. Yeah, and I guess humans and relationships as a whole is a big pain point for a lot of people because a lot of people don't know how to communicate. A lot of people have challenges in relationships. A lot of people don't know what they want. A lot of people feel guilty. There's so much to unpack. So I'm really looking forward to where this goes. So for the people that are just meeting you today, Lily, and hearing you and your story and have nothing to know about you, could you
mhm.
give us your story? Give us your glass of wine to the bottle. Tell us a little bit
Yeah.
about you.
Yeah. Awesome. So I was very fascinated by the human body from a very young age. I didn't kind of have the typical upbringing that normal people have. I didn't have the kind of mum and the dad and grew up in a family dynamic. It was very different dynamics there. So I learnt through books, and I that's how I learnt about, my body, how it works. Um, when my body was changing, I had to learn all through books that I would find at the library or um, at people's houses in their kind of collection that they have. So I became really, really intrigued with anatomy and physiology, and nothing kind of really made sense to me because I have a very structured mind. So I need the start, the middle, and the ending of things.
You sound like me. I like that. That's awesome.
Yes, definitely. So I had to know exactly what was going on in my body to be able to understand it. And that really kind of set me up as I got older and as my body was changing and how my hormones and everything were evolving. I constantly had to reach to something for me to understand what was actually going on. So that's kind of where it started. And then it went for the next 13 years of medical experience. So I started out doing nursing, and then I went into paramedics, and then I was working in palliative care, disability support. And it, because I was also always fascinated with the human body, I really wanted to know then more about the mind. So, and I wanted to know more about myself because I've experienced plenty of trauma in my life, the ups and downs of life, hitting rock bottom multiple times, having nowhere to go, no one to turn to. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to start with the inside out. So I did my Bachelor of Psychological Science to learn more about myself. And that opened up many channels into my spirituality and who I was as a person. Relationship paradigms was always a massive issue for me because I felt like I was broken because I didn't fit in the normal, like societal norm of what a relationship should be or what I wanted.
How old
So,
were you when you started to have those realizations?
well, I realized I was different when I was 6 years old, and I knew that I was more into women than I was into men.
Okay.
And that was a massive experience because at the time I was living with my mother, and she's very, very, very strictly Christian,
Yeah.
very strictly Christian. And so was my entire family. So we did the whole pray the gay way. I was even like strapped to my bed and prayed for days on end
Wow.
to remove the demons from within me. So I had to chameleon my entire life into something that society wanted me to be, which was husband, family, kids, white picket fence life. And that's the way that I had to live. And it couldn't be anything other than that.
Not to cut you off from your story, which we're not even done with yet, but did that experience of having, I guess, such the polar opposite, or such, I guess, pressure and expectations put on you, did it in hindsight now, giving you so much more purpose and more drive and more energy to do what it is that you do now?
A lot more power, for sure, because it was kind of, I was suppressed and silenced for so long, especially like even in my teenage years. There was always manipulation and control of who I dated and who I didn't. And if I did date anyone out of what my family wanted me to be or be with, it was, they would sabotage relationships. So I just got to a point where I was just too stubborn. I just thought, you know what, I am so sick of being something that someone else wants me to be and what society wants me to be. And I just rebelled. I said, fuck everything. I am me, and you can accept me for who I am or move along.
I love that. Continue as you were. So figuring out, learning, you've done 13 years in the medical industry. You've now done self-work in the psychology. Was that the right order? I got that right?
Yeah, yep.
And then what from there? What happened from there?
Yeah, and then psychology I found was very limiting. So psychology specifically is, when you become a registered psychologist, it's majorly focused on diagnosing people with mental health illnesses. And these mental health illnesses are very, I would say, like even outdated. And a lot of our mental health issues, because society has, and us as human beings have evolved so much, that a lot of our mental health issues can be fixed through natural things and being able to understand ourselves and creating a new identity for ourselves and removing all these trauma, like working through trauma in a natural sense and being more in tune with our bodies and ourselves. And it's just so easy to go to a psychologist or be a psychologist and read off a checklist for an hour, and then there you go. You have a disease.
So did you go down that path? Because this is probably not the bigger topic of this, but that's obviously very interesting to me with what I'm into. So have you practiced as a psychologist?
So I've only done my bachelor and I was doing my postgrad. So our postgraduate is when you do your first study, you do a lot of research, all those kinds of things. It's essentially just statistics.
Yeah.
And I was working for a lady, she was my provisional psychologist.
Yeah.
And I worked with her for like 6 months last year, and I was helping her do these diagnoses, and she's like, this is it. This is essentially what you do. You go and sit in a room, talk to people for an hour to 4 hours. You answer, just tick boxes, write up an assessment, and then, okay, be on your merry way. You have PTSD or you have whatever. So
we won't go down that rabbit hole completely, but it's that what you just said is why I'm I guess so passionate about it, because it's like there's such better ways of doing things.
Yes.
Anyways, continue as you were. So 13 years, done the bachelor, psychology diploma in counseling. I guess, how did you now get to, or start to get more clear on, I guess, maybe your niche or practicing what it is that you're practicing, working with the people that you work with? How did you make that transition into that kind of niche of where you are now?
Yeah, definitely. So instead of going down the psych route, I decided to go, well, I wanted to help people get to the root cause of things, get people to look at who they are as themselves, especially in relationships as well. Like, what is your specific identity within a relationship? Instead of your identity is the relationship or that other person. And I found that I was working with disability people because I was disabled at one point in my life, which is another story. And the issues that I had surrounding relationships too, and me going to relationship counselors, and because I don't fit the normal I guess, relationship paradigm is I found that all of these counselors and psychologists, they did not understand the dynamics at all. You go to any counselor or psychologist, and most of them are, you essentially have all your theory, which is based on a lot of outdated things that are based on all of these psychoanalytical
Old school shit.
Yeah, perspectives that only represents males and females, and males liking females and females liking males.
Yeah.
But what about all the other paradigms associated with that? So I found that when I was exploring open relationships or poly relationships or throuples, that there was no counselor out there that could really help, because they were just giving the typical assistance of if I was a man and they were a woman and vice versa. And it just, the paradigms didn't work with the information and the assistance that we were given.
Yep.
So when I went through and did all my diploma of counseling, I just thought, wow, there's a lot of like legality around counseling, and it has to be done a specific way. But I just thought, you know what, fuck this. There's not enough people out there helping the LGBTQ plus community, these different paradigms, and there needs to be more. There needs to be more education, but also people in these counseling roles and in psychology roles that are helping with these paradigms, and there's not out there.
Okay. And tell me, how was that transition? How have you now got into where you are now? So how and like, maybe you can get even clearer, like, what is it that you do with people? Who do you work with, and like, what service, how do you add value? What problems do you deal with? So yeah, I'd love to hear, I guess, more of the meat and veg of what you do, of exactly how you do. So how did you get to, I guess, specifically doing what you do now, and what do you do?
Yeah, definitely. So a lot of people think because I'm a poly open throuple relationship counselor that I try and convert monogamous relationships into these paradigms. And I 100% do not do that at all. Also, I don't condone people that hide from their partners or keep secrets, or, you know, sleep with people behind each other's backs, etc. And there's so many people that do that out there because they don't have the knowledge or education to be able to do all these things or explore these different options in a very productive, healthy way that they can do it with their partners.
I absolutely love that. And again, not to go back off to let you finish, but I read the book, The Ethical Slut, very early on. Probably I consciously made a decision to stay single for a long time because I was working on me. It's like, and I grew up and I saw my parents and my friends and all their relationships very painful. They cheated, abuse. Like that was my experience of relationships. I was like, fuck that. My libertine belief back then. So it's like, I literally made that decision to work on me, to stay out of it. It's not, I'm obviously doing business and I've got other things on, but I was always curious on it because I do want to have a healthy relationship when I'm ready for it. And reading the Ethical Slut and also The Way of the Superior Man with my first two, which like really, I guess, opened my perspective. Like, holy shit, there are other ways of doing things. You don't have to be the white picket fence, the traditional, I guess, vanilla way of doing things that everyone expects you to fit into, which I guess you got challenged as a 6-year-old to, I guess, give you that this whole journey to, I guess get so experienced in it. So yeah, I just wanted to add on to what you were saying because I would love to hear more about that as we go. So continue as you were.
Okay, yes. So more of what I do is there's, once again, giving people the education to be able to talk to their partners about certain paradigms or opening up their relationships, and giving people the support and self-development into who they are within a relationship. So as I was explaining before, say if you want to go the typical, I guess, societal relationship is, if you want to use, you know, specific terms of boy meets girl, but whoever meets whoever, they get together, you are connected through similarities and same values and same morals and all those kinds of things. And, you know, same hobbies and interests. And then over time you gravitate towards those interests and hobbies. And then you do more of those things together. And over a long period of time, slowly, you start to stop doing all of the things that you used to do that kind of made you that individual person, they slowly tip away, because then you're adding more like paradigms and variables into that relationship. So instead of just boy meets girl and you live separately and you have all this free time to be able to do what you want, now you're both working, and now you're both trying to save for a house and all of these things together, or go on holidays, and then you get married and then you have kids. So then it's adding variables into this identity that you've created with this other person, which is
not the real you.
Yeah, exactly. But it's a version of you, but it's a version of you within that relationship. So now you are the husband, now you are the wife, now you are the partner, you're the whatever. And then you live like that for a certain period of time, and you look back and go, everything becomes stagnant, and you have issues within your relationship, and you can't go and see your friends or just have a beer down at the pub with one of your mates, on a Friday afternoon. And that becomes an issue. And then you want to do things by yourself, and then you're made to feel guilty of doing that. And the issue is why? Like, why does it get to that point where you're living so restrictively? And most of the time it's because you have lost your complete identity. You've created this identity as the husband-wife partner within the relationship, the values, the morals, your specific role. So for example, like for me as a wife, it was that societal norm and that stigma of I had to be a specific thing, which is work full time, pick up the kids, washing's done, clean the house, make sure dinner's on the table. And you just unconsciously kind of sink into this role, because it is embedded in absolutely everything that we've fed from our parents, through generations of our DNA, to everything that we watch on social media, through
TV shows, cartoons,
Exactly.
They program us to see that way. And it's like, and very discreetly, like me and Georgia, my partner, we discuss this with people. We see friends of ours that are in relationships, and they have that unofficial stigma there where the wife cooks, it's like, hey honey, I'm hungry, can you make me food? It's like, well, it's like, why? It's like, well, that's her job. It's like, well, is it? Is that?
Yeah, you can get your own food.
No, you can make your own food, sir. So it's like, it's I totally agree with that. I would love to know how would you, if someone comes to you with that issue that you can identify really really clearly, how do you work through that? How do you help someone? Because I think that would be a very common issue with a lot of people, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but how would you help people, I guess, just work on that? Because that alone would create incredible change if you were to move past that problem.
Yeah, definitely. Well, the first issue, the only time that people actually reach out is to one, when they're like on the verge of breaking up, as in they either go see counseling last minute, or that's it, it's completely done, or two, the sex has stopped and there's no intimacy. That is the only two reasons that people have reached out to me.
Okay.
So it's not until sex becomes an issue that either men or women go, oh, okay, well, there's something wrong. So initially someone comes to me and goes, we're not having sex anymore, so fix it. How do we have more sex? How do we connect with each other? And
how do you work with that? If you're okay asking those private questions, how do you work with people in that scenario?
Yeah, so I get them to self-reflect about themselves. I say, I want people to see that it's not just sex that's the issue. You can't fix sex with sex, because this person that you've created for yourself within this relationship, and their version of themselves that they've created for this relationship, is like holding up a mirror. Your values, morals, everything is exactly the same. You have these specific roles that you like both parties restrict themselves with, themselves and for the other person. And a lot of people are going to look in the mirror without self-esteem, without working on themselves, without having any form of identity outside of the role of working 9 to 5, waking up and doing the same Groundhog Day, like every single day, you're not going to look in the mirror and want to have sex with yourself. So then why would you look in the mirror and want to have sex with your partner and be intimate with your partner? Because you don't like yourself. And people don't realize that they don't like themselves because they don't have the time to actually look at themselves in the mirror. So I say to a lot of partners, all right, first thing that you need to do is, who are you? Like, who are you? And they say, oh, well, I'm a father. I work 9 to 5. I've got a really great job. I do this and I do that. We do family holidays. And I'm like, okay, well, that's great. But what are you outside of the husband? What are you outside of the father? What are you outside of a work colleague? What are you? And a lot of people can't answer that. And it's very interesting because we're so short fused and constantly on and constantly scrolling through our phones or social media or at work or listening to music or podcasts or talking to people in the car, and we're constantly on, and we're in this wave of just, I need constant stimulation. By the time we go to bed, we're so mentally and physically exhausted. When are we ever going to think about ourselves? Then we get up and then we have other priorities. We need to get the kids out of bed. We need to do this. We need to do that. So then we keep on this kind of train of moving forward and constantly being stimulated, but we're not even considering ourselves in the process at all, ever. So
what exercises would you give someone? I'm like, if I was a client right now and I'm like, okay, yeah, I don't know who I am. I don't know who I am outside of being a father. I've been doing this for 20 years and XYZ. How would you get someone to start to get clear on who they are? Because I work with I guess I see a lot of similarities in how I work with people. So I'd love to hear how would you get someone to I guess, just a quote that I use quite frequently is the gentleman that Michelangelo that created the statue of David. He says, how did you make such a masterpiece? And he said, quite simple. I just removed everything that wasn't David. So it's like, it's just taken away all those things that you think you should be, or that you're caught up with. And it's like, well, who are you? Just take that away. It's not about creating yourself. It's just releasing and uncovering who you are. It is there. It's deep down inside. You just haven't fucking spent time with yourself, journaled, meditated, or whatever it is. You haven't asked yourself the right questions. So how would you get someone, say I was your client and I was experiencing all of those things and I didn't know who I was, how would you get me to figure out who I am?
Yeah, definitely. So I tell people that we're going to strip you back to absolutely nothing. Awesome. Everything that you've created within yourself, you are just a primitive state right now, which is shelter, sex, food. Okay, we do those unconsciously. We know what we need. We know what we want in those realms. Yep. But what is beyond that? Okay, so who are you as a person? What is your identity, and what creates that identity for you outside of materialistic things? So, you know, your house, your job, your car, all these things. What are you outside of your relationship and your different hats, you could say, that you wear? Who are you? So what are your hobbies? What are your desires? What interests do you have? Do you like reading? Do you like listening to music? What kind of music do you like listening to? We have all of these things that we ask when we first meet someone and we first start dating. So it's kind of like, go on a date with yourself.
I like that. Go on a date with yourself. I haven't heard that before. I like that.
Yeah. So it's ask yourself all the questions that you would ask on a first date. So what do you like? What do you do for work? Are you happy with your job? What do you like to do for hobbies or interests? Do you like to go hiking? Do you like to go kayaking? Do you like to go to the beach? Like, what places do you like to go? And specifically, like, what music do you listen to? It's something so simple, but we find that even music, even TV shows, even all of these things are based around what you watch together in the relationship. So if you could just turn on the TV right now and watch absolutely anything that you would want to watch, what would it be?
Mario Kart.
Yeah. What what genre do you like to watch? Like, what type of TV shows do you like to watch? So like all of these simple questions that you ask yourself will really open up your eyes to knowing that you don't know a lot of the answers to these questions. And a lot of people don't. They can't answer, or they go, oh yeah, we watch Gossip Girl. But I say, like, do you as a person, would you watch Gossip Girl on your own? No, hell no. Like, I don't even like it. Or you are conditioned to like it because your partner likes it and you want them to be happy. And it's kind of that codependency, self-feeding ego. And that's the reason why we fall into these paradigms and these social norms, is because we subconsciously do it to ourselves. And then we have this expectation that our partners, because they're mimicking this type of social construct, but then we have to as well, and that will make them happy. So it's this selfless pleasing our partner for this social construct that both of you don't want, but you're doing it to please the other person.
That's interesting. I see exactly where you're coming from, because I've been there before, early days, and in relationships. I think everyone would experience to a degree if you're not, I guess, educated on what you just said. But it's like, for my listeners that hear me speak about values a lot, it's like giving each other not even, I wouldn't use the word permission, but giving each other the time and the space to fill up your own values, in terms of, like, I use like cups. You got to fill up those individual cups. So if like if you're quite like you and me are quite gamey, like, it's like that's thing. It's like, George, if you're not here, I'm gonna play it anyways. So I'm playing it now. You want to join or not? No worries. I'm playing this anyways.
Yeah.
It's like, or it might be nature for George, and my partner like loves nature. Like, she wants to structure in time and structure in those things to fill herself up, and not take me into an account, because, and not care about what I'm doing, because I'll take care of myself, and obviously have time there together somewhere. But it's like, do you find a lot of people, they don't actually fill themselves up first, and they just try to just meet in the middle and just trying to find a win-win, even though it's actually a lose-lose, because they both generally wouldn't want to be doing the fucking thing anyways. It's like, they're always, I guess, subconsciously, this is just my experience anyways, and unless you're, I guess, aware of this, conscious of this, and implement this, is that you're always accommodating for someone else. You're never actually doing what you want. You're not actually living the life that you want, because you're always compromising your decisions and your actions for this other person, where they're doing the same thing. Does that make sense? Is that what you've experienced with clients that you work with?
Yes, 100%. And even in my own relationships as well, it gets to a point where once you've created this identity for yourself, which is the wife or the husband or whatever the paradigm is, if the other person then wants to do anything outside the norm, then it is a threat to that person's ego and their identity, because they've created that identity. So you even listen to vows. Like, I went to a wedding not even a month ago, and their vows are like, we are one soul, we are one body, we are one mind, we are one, which is beautiful and great. But you're also your own person that is interconnected with the other. You're not just the one person. And because of this stigma of, what's mine is yours, everything has to be 100% equal, and we can only grow to certain, I guess, spaces together at the same time. A lot of issues around people doing their own thing, or going to the beach, or having your own outlet, and Georgia having her own outlet, is because of this identity that they've created with this other person. If they do anything that is not with them or doesn't involve them, it threatens their identity and who they are as a person, even though it's not even directly related at all. And the ego kicks in, and like automatically assuming that something is wrong within the relationship because they have an outlet away from them. And that's why when the best advice that I can give to anyone that is just starting out in a relationship is know like your boundaries and limitations, but also you don't have to do absolutely fucking everything together. Yes, have your own values and morals and things that you do together, but keep your identity and other things to yourself. And no, they don't have to embed themselves in absolutely every inch of your being, because it then becomes really, really toxic, really toxic. Like I was in a relationship paradigm where I was monogamous with a man, and I would just, we would have this, right routine of, work and then kids, put the kids to bed, and then we'd sit on the couch and just watch TV and for like 2 hours and then go to bed, or 2 hours and then just before we went to bed, we would have sex, and it's just this boring routine. And I hate routine because I just get so bored really quickly. Yeah. So I thought we need to change this up. Tonight I'm going to go to the gym. Or they would say, hey, I'm going to go down to the pub with my friends for a drink. And that stigma of you have to do absolutely everything together, and conditioning each other to be together constantly all the time because you get along so well and you're best friends, and they're your partner, and you want to create these memories with them, which is also great and yes, needs to be done. But then they make you feel guilty for just going to the gym to train. Like, you need your own space, you need your own time. And a fight would break out. Who are you seeing? What are you doing? Why are you going out at 7:30 at night to go to the gym? And then you're trying to explain to them, well, I haven't had time at all today because I've been doing X, Y, Z, doing the cooking, the cleaning, all these things. I need some downtime for myself. And because we've created that one identity together, they see that as you taking away a part of their identity. There's something wrong, and they're pulling away from you because of that really constrictive codependency that happens. And it's everything that you do is a constant threat to their ego. And that's why people get so defensive about it. And that's what's the main issue within relationships.
I fucking love that. I don't want to go down that continuous rabbit hole for ages because there's so much more to you. So I could keep going on that, but I would actually like to shift it a little bit. I'll frame it and then I'll ask the question. From my experience, having, I guess, more of a different structured relationship paradigm, having the ability to bring other people into our relationship in the bedroom specifically, not in terms of a third person dating. Mm-hmm. From what I've experienced from seeing other people do this is, I'm speaking more from a man's side of things because I find this more with the men than the ladies, but I'm sure it does happen. But mm-hmm. The gentlemen, they're like, yeah, let's, they're with their partner and they just want to get some more action from other ladies. They just want to sleep with more girls. And they're like, hey, can we have threesomes? Can we be more open? Can we bring more people into it? But only girls, no guys. Mm-hmm. And they only want that. So, and the reason I'm saying that is, I'm sure there's I don't know how to question this, but what's the right way about actually intentionally opening up a relationship, making sure that your intentions are pure? Because I've just noticed, like I was kind of saying then, there's a lot of gentlemen that I've seen that they think they're like banging on their chest, like, fuck yeah, I'm just getting to sleep with all these girls and I don't have to do it with any dudes. And when the girlfriend says, oh, can we do it with the guy? Nah, that's not happening. That's not happening. It's like, well, you're okay with 2 girls, but you're not okay with 2 guys. And it's like, maybe that is the actual right setup, right intention. But I just find that they're doing it for not necessarily the right reasons. Does that make sense? I don't know if I explained that right, but I guess, and the question off that is, I guess, what do you see as the biggest, I guess, challenge people go into this kind of world? And what's the right way of doing it? Did that make sense? Did that come across right?
Yeah, definitely. I find that a lot of men that want to be open and explore these new paradigms with other women is their sex life or relationship has become stagnant and they just want to mix it up a little bit. And men are very primitive. You have a very sexual drive because you're more aligned with your primitive states, which is perfectly fine. And women are as well. But yes, a lot of men do it for the wrong reasons. A lot of men click into kind of that primitive mode. Men, from a anthropological point of view, were programmed for a very long time to have sex and procreate and reproduce in a way, and women were then designed to create and reproduce, and that's essentially all we were kind of made for, in a sense. I do not believe this at all. So when a male says, yep, they want to bring a new person into the relationship, as in have sex with other women, it's purely, yes, primitively driven, which is an unconscious state, but then it is programmed by their conscious state, which is a part of their ego, and it's ego driven. It's, I want to do all these things, yes, and hold myself to these standards. And the reason why I want to go and sleep with other women is because I need that ego validation. I need to be validated as a person. It's not necessarily built on a primitive state of, yes, just having sex with other people, even though that is a massive drive. Especially when it comes to like pheromones and chemo signals, and I could go on and on about that. But the reason why they don't want a man then to be involved with the woman is because he's marked his territory. That is his territory, and no one else can touch that. Once again, a primitive state, but it's driven by a broken ego. They don't want a man coming into the relationship because they don't want her to be emotionally involved with someone else or mark his territory per se in a primitive sense. And it changes a man's chemical reactions and pheromones when there's another male involved.
Amazing. I was just about to take a drink of water.
Yeah.
So what would be, I guess, if it, I don't like to label things right or wrong, but if I'd say that's like what most people do without, I guess, the right intention, what is, I guess, the right way to, like, when is it the right time or the right situation for someone to maybe start to explore different structures, whether, and there's so many in from the book, that I mentioned earlier, The Ethical Slut, there's so many, there's no, you're open or you're closed or you're this or you're that. It's like, it could be, there's like, I saw a really cool photo that Georgia showed me a while ago. It's like, there's a spectrum of, say, bisexuality. It's like, you could be like, say 50-50 male, female. You could be 80-20, like male, female. Like there's no black and white when it comes to this. The beautiful thing is you can have whatever style and structure that you want, which is what I love about this. So when is the time right? When is the situation right where it is probably a time for you to maybe start to open your mind up and look at different structures versus what we just said then, when men are just trying to get the ego pump and I just want to be the man and sleep with more ladies and conquer all these women. So when is the time right then, when looking into those situations is probably a very good discussion for you, for a partner?
You will never get anywhere. You'll never get what you want. You'll never be able to open up your relationship in any form of paradigm if you don't work on yourself first, if you don't get your self-esteem in check, if you don't get your ego in check, if you don't get your identity in check, and if you don't have an identity outside of your relationship that you are in a relationship with that person with. So in any form of structure, when you want to talk to your partner about this, say I'm in a relationship with my partner and I say, yep, I want to explore with other women, this has happened in the past, is I want to explore with other women, to a man, and they said, hell no, that's cheating, that's wrong, like I don't agree with it, even if it's a sexual sense, even if it's in a relationship sense, hell no. And I said, well, why? And it was because of their own ego, their self-esteem. Our relationship inflated their self-esteem, where that identity was created. And if there was any form of shift, once again, a threat to that identity, it also threats our ego. So no woman especially would be open to a concept of a man wanting to explore with other women if she doesn't have an identity. She has self-esteem issues. Like, as a human being, as a person in a relationship, we give and give and give. We be this specific structure and this person for our significant other, but we let ourselves go. We put on weight. We stop dressing up all the time. We don't have any kind of external outlets whatsoever. And then the man comes to you and says, I want to explore with other people. of course, then you're going to use your ego to respond to that. It's, well, obviously I'm not good enough. I know that I don't feel good within myself. I don't look the way that I used to look. I don't act the way that I used to act. So you just want to go fuck other people and move on from me because there's a hot blonde thing that's a size 10 and she's in the gym and she has a perfect body and I don't have that. So that we then use that ego to then compare ourselves to other people rather than know ourselves, be complete and content with who we are, and have that self-esteem built, that new foundation, that identity within ourselves, to then be able to go, yeah, do it. She's fucking amazing. She's hot. Or I trust you, and just go do your thing. And that trust comes down to just communication.
Amazing. Could you go into the communication a little bit more, what you just finished on? So what is really healthy? Because from our experience in I guess exploring this and just growing and getting more confident with it all, is that the more communication, the more boundaries, the more, I guess, details that we put into like what's okay, this is like just a good way, we actually spoke about this a while ago now, but it's like the nature of being in more of an, I guess, different structured relationship, more of an open relationship, it forces you to have to communicate more because you've got other factors, you've got other people's insecurities. And another way to look at it as well is when you get triggered and some insecurities pop up, it brings that to your awareness so you can actually work on it. So it's like I'm actually a fan of being triggered because triggers identify your areas to heal. So the more triggered you get, the more you grow, right? So if you process through it, if you work through it, not just react to it. But where I was going with that is when it comes to communication, and if you could give me some detailed answers, is how can someone say right now someone's listening and they're like, look, I'm in a relationship, I guess monogamous one, but we've both got to a point where we are actually wanting to explore, try things out, test things out, etc. How do you go about really getting clear on expectations, standards, guidelines, boundaries, communication as a whole? How would you go through that process with someone?
Yeah, definitely. Well, first of all, make it fun and be in a comfortable environment to first talk about these things. Don't sit down like you're, planning finances or the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Just have a conversation and talk about, first of all, give the other person space to really open up without judgment what they want. So firstly, what do you want to explore? Who do you want to explore? What are your boundaries and limitations with that? Do you want to explore together? Do you want to explore alone? What are you comfortable with me doing? What are your limitations and boundaries for me? How would you feel if I then did the same thing or similar thing? So you're wanting them to reflect firstly on what they want as a person, like your other partner, your significant other, as what they want specifically, but then also what expectations do they hold you to, and vice versa, and have that open space. Write it down and say, okay, now you have this expectation for me and this boundary for me. I've got this boundary for you. So then how can we kind of meet in the middle?
Yeah. I'll just say, I just literally had a thought then. It's similar to the question I just asked previously. When you get to that point and say you get like a stalemate where like the man wants to have the ladies, but he won't let the lady have the man. How do you find that often? And then how do you work through that?
Yeah, definitely. Well, you might find that the woman doesn't want to explore a man, like another guy. So for example, me and what I've been through is I've been in a monogamous relationship with a man and I'm fine with that. I don't want to go have sex with other men because I kind of feel like that I am fulfilled in that area with male touch and etc. And I want to explore with females. So it all depends on specifically what you want and whether you want to open yourself up to men or women or non-binary or whatever gender that you prefer. I think there's always that expectation of everything has to be exactly equal. So if I'm with women and men, you can be with women and men, but I know that you're not into men. So then does that mean the other person can't sleep with women? So it's never going to be exactly equal. And that's why you have to have certain boundaries on certain things, but knowing that those are also going to change. Boundaries and limitations are going to change, but it's continuously, even more so, working on yourself throughout the whole experience, because these egos and these triggers and these primal states are going to pop up where, you know, the man will feel very primitive about keeping his territory marked with other men, and the woman will see that another woman coming into her household and her like identity will be threatened, and we're nesters. So if anyone comes into our space, they need to know their place as well. So it all depends on the paradigms, and it's really hard because there's no specific structure. There's no, okay, you need to do this, this, and this will fix everything, because opening up a relationship has too many variables, but it all comes down to and boils down to self-esteem, ego, and identity. And if you can't resolve those first, then it doesn't matter what boundaries you put in place as a couple. You don't have any boundaries as yourself as an individual person. So then how can you make boundaries for your relationship if you don't have your own?
I like that. That is amazing advice for people that are in that. Watch that segment back again. Replay that. This is an odd one. I thought of this as you're talking. If we were, this goes back to what we said at the start, obviously through society expectations, obviously, especially what you experienced growing up, is like we're, I guess, programmed or pushed to, I guess, view relationships a certain way. I'm curious on your thoughts on this, it might be an odd question, is if we were to take away all the social programming that we get, social's expectations, and I guess everything that we get influenced into how things should be, innately as human beings, primarily as human beings, what is our what's the more natural setup in relationships? Is it to be more, I know that's a spectrum because you could be extreme one way, extreme the other. You could have fucking 10 wives, 10 boyfriends, or monogamous, one on one. I guess if we take away all the programming and all the expectations, where is the, I guess, the happy medium of dating relationships? I know that sounded a bit, I don't know if that came across the right way, but it's like, where do we naturally sit on that spectrum? Are we actually really monogamous? Because I don't think so. I think we're more in the middle. Again, the spectrum of it, but where do you think we sit innately? If we were to remove all the social expectations, especially what you fucking experienced, you had quite a hard version of that, but like, if we removed all of that, where would we as human beings, as a society, as a consciousness, where would we sit in terms of a normal relationship? Because right now, normal is monogamous. I don't see that shit as normal. What would be our normal?
Yeah, definitely. So primitively, it was to reproduce. And then as we evolved as a species, we were then purely driven by pleasure. So we found that, this is anthropologically speaking, going back millions of years ago, however long it's been since we've been around, it was reproducing. And then we've found, they found all of this similarities in dolphins and monkeys, and there was a third one as well, where they just have sex purely for pleasure.
I have heard that. I knew that too. I have heard a third one. I can't remember.
Yes. I can't remember it either. Maybe the third one's us. But so, and then we went into realizing that sex was pleasurable. So then we started having pleasure for sex. And millions of years ago, it was something like 83% of all cultures were polyamorous at one point.
Okay.
We would just be with whoever we wanted, XYZ. Even in the Bible, it says that there was that, like, Sodom and Gomorrah and the town of something or whatever, and everyone was sleeping with whoever. Everyone was fluid and open and would just have sex with whoever they wanted to. And that whole city was classified as the sin city. And this is in the Bible. And Jesus or God or whoever said to everyone that they had to leave the city because a meteor was going to come down and destroy the entire city. And if you looked back, then you would turn to a pillar of salt. So And they obviously did. So Sodom and Gomorrah were these two people that lived in this city, and they were sinning, and they were told to leave. And if you did leave, well, then you were, redeemed or whatever. And if you looked back, then you turned to a pillar of salt. One of them obviously did. They turned into a pillar of salt. But whether you want to take that as literal or a, just a
story.
yeah, a metaphor per se, that when Christianity came into it, roughly in the Viking times, then Christianity then filtered out polyamory, open style relationships, reproducing for pleasure, sex, all of these things. And it turned into pleasure is a sin. Pleasure is something that you're not here for. And you must essentially sell your soul to another human being, bind yourself with them for all eternity, and you will only be able to be with them forever. And this whole monogamous shit came from Christianity. It came from religion. So that's how it started. And yes, they had that in the ancient times, where they believed that the gods, we were a two-headed.
Yeah, and you gotta find your soulmate.
Yeah, and we were split in two, and then we had to spend forever of our lives finding our significant other. So it's always been kind of embedded, but it was never enforced per se. But yes, it was enforced by Christianity. And if you were caught out of wedlock or sleeping with someone else or adultering, you'd be stoned to death. And that was a sin. So it was up there with stealing bread to killing someone. And the third one was adultery, or sleeping with anyone else other than your significant other. So it was kind of around the times of even after the witches and burning all the witches, if anyone was different outside of the societal norm was based on Christianity and based on religion, then you would be killed. So we've established our whole society around a religion that hardly any of us follow anymore. I honestly don't understand it. But then from there, we then slowly evolved. And now we're kind of gone this full circle of, wait, screw societal norms, screw Christianity, and screw having to be a certain way. And I would say that the gays paved this way for us, because they said, no, we've been fighting our entire lives to have the same rights as everyone else, and that's still shunned upon. Them fucking getting married to whoever they want to, because once again, marriage is religious, and it can't be anything other than religious, which is so ridiculous. So yeah, anyway, that's my rant.
I know, that was awesome. I got a lot out of that. I haven't put all those dots together. You didn't answer the question though. So at the end of that, what is your answer? You kind of gave I guess that your beliefs behind it, which is awesome. So what would be your actually answer to that question? Where would we sit? Are we very much like sleep with whoever like that innately, or is there, if we were to take away all the structure, the expectations, the religion, all of those influences that have programmed us to be who we are and have the expectations that we have put upon us, how would we actually act as humans today?
I think we would actually realize that we are not human beings at all, where our body is within a spirit, within an energy, within a structure. And if you take away societal norms, if you take away this organism that we're actually in, or it's inside us, you'll find that spiritually we are nor male nor female. We're nor monogamous or polyamorous. We are just a being, an energy that's vibrating at a certain level that then is connected to someone else on a certain level. We are just chemicals and protons and neutrons and electrons and atoms, and stuck into this kind of, sensory, chemical based meat sack. We're just walking around and think that we have to be something, but we've just created poly, open, and all of these terms. We've just created monogamy. We've created social structures. So we are everything and anything that we want to be.
The book that we spoke about before we started speaking on this podcast is Becoming Supernatural by Joe Dispenza. Says a lot of the stuff you just said. I
Oh,
fucking
wow.
love what you just brought up. How it's like we are like at our core, we are just electrons and protons put together. You put that all together, you get a cell. You put more of those together, you get a tissue. You put all those tissues together, you get an organ. Put an organ together. Like, so at our
Yes.
core, we are just frequency and energy vibrating at a certain frequency.
Yes.
And but anyway, so that was a great answer. I love that answer. I guess I'd like to use this to maybe start to wrap this up.
Mm.
I'd like to know from that point you just finished on, how do we as a whole, I like the point that you made about the gays as well, because you're absolutely right. They did segue this and start to challenge religion and actually challenge people's beliefs. Like I grew up, I've got an uncle who's gay and he's married with a partner in New Zealand. And it's like, so I've always grown up and seen that as okay. I've always been, but I know obviously there's a lot of judgment around that. There's a lot of stigma. There's a lot of religious in pushed upon that. So my question from that is, how do we as a whole start to really evolve our level of thinking and start to open our minds up more? Obviously, the work that you do is amazing. This podcast that we're doing is going to add to it. But how do we start to take those more substantial steps, like the gay movement, approving the marriage, et cetera, et cetera? How do we move towards having a society where there is none of those religious injections of their beliefs and how things should be and how things ought to be and all that stuff? So how do we start as a society, start to progress this?
I think we have to work from the inside out. So first of all, stripping ourselves down to absolutely nothing, and then reconstructing ourselves and opening up more neural pathways and connections, and getting to know ourselves as a spiritual being instead of a physical being. Because that
Before you continue on that, where would you just, because I would ask another 10 questions just on that. Where can someone start to develop the spiritual learnings? Do you have any recommendations, any resources, any books or anything just like that? Because that's a topic I find a lot of people don't know where to fucking start. So like, where do you start from what you just said? Where would someone start to develop that and work on that? Do you have any recommendations or anything, anywhere they could go? Besides,
definitely.
obviously coming to you directly, of course.
And,
do you have any like books or anything that's really helped you discover that part of you?
I do have a couple of books. One is called How to Do the Work by Nicole. I should have went and grabbed it. But anyways, it's called How to Do the Work. It is absolutely incredible. It's getting you to start from the inside out, our past traumas and how that's kind of constructed who we are as beings and who we are now, which is super great. It's more of a getting to know your identity and your foundation, less on the biological side. So I just started with something as simple as meditating, and a lot of people can't do it. And that's the whole point, is it's called a practice because you have to practice it. And people try it one or two times and they just don't really understand the concept. But it's teaching people around the biology behind why you have to physically do it, which is on my past podcasts as well. Like educating people as much as possible on the biology of who they are, then working through a spiritual sense. Once again, I started with meditation. I started with self-help books and like how to do the work and really figuring out who I am. And then once I kind of understood my ego, my self-esteem, all of those things, I wanted to learn more about myself and wanted to learn about more of my brain and unlock more of myself. So then I was doing like ayahuasca, which I don't know whether you've heard of.
I want to go to Peru and actually do the full experience. I haven't done it. There's actually some places you can get it on the Gold Coast to do it, but
yes,
we haven't done it. Me and George have discussed it. We have done a fair few mushroom sessions together. We're actually considering doing that today, FYI. So, but no, I haven't done it. But I do definitely want to do the full experience. So yeah.
Yes, definitely. So ayahuasca is a really good one. Mushrooms as well, like psilocybin. There is so much research to really solidify what psilocybin treatments do, especially for like PTSD and trauma patients and all those kinds of things.
You've watched the documentary Fantastic Fungi?
Yes.
Amazing. For people watching Netflix, Amazing. Incredible.
Yes, go watch that first. But yeah, so there's a few places that actually do guided psilocybin treatments.
Nice.
Now, in Australia, I'm just letting everyone know that is currently illegal. So I can't not tell you that to go do that and not, but do it. It's been around for the past like 5 to 10 years in America and in other forms of the world, sorry.
They've got snippets of that on the documentary. They've got that guy that puts the mask on and actually takes some, and then there's a person there guiding him through it. So
yes,
that's what I was picturing just then. So keep going.
yes, definitely. But they are training people now at the moment. So there's an actual course that you can do, but you have to be a qualified psychiatrist and been or a psychologist for 7 years before you're able to do the course. However, it's going to be legal in the next 2 years in Australia, which is awesome. However, like I said, there are people that already do this, aka
just under the table. They just do it sneakily.
Yes, maybe someone in this podcast may know
possibly
where you could possibly do those things. And also microdosing LSD or having an LSD experience as well, which is another outlet. And just the research behind it is absolutely phenomenal. And I've tried it myself.
I haven't done that yet either. I've looked to it. DMT, been trying to figure that out. Been trying to not figure it out, trying to find some.
Yes.
But attract it. It'll happen when it's meant to happen, right? So that's awesome. They're amazing. Any more suggestions?
On the point of the whole getting to know yourself and taking yourself on a date, take yourself on a date in a sexual sense as well.
Ooh.
Yes. So we are like 89% receptive, not just within our mind, but within our bodies as well. So I will take a lot of people more into sensory play but within themselves, get to know themselves and their body, and really connecting body, soul, and mind at the same time. So we continuously think we're just a body and a mind, but we're also a body, soul, and mind. We need to connect all of these things. We need to be mindful. We need to understand how we work. We need to manage and be able to understand ourselves so much, because once again, we are a computer. So we also need to understand how the mind then talks to the body, and be able to really understand what organism we are in right now. Like, what is this? How does it work? What can we do with it? And how can we get our minds and our bodies to talk to each other? And we do it every single day unconsciously, walking around, eating, doing all these things. But once again, we don't look at our hands and we don't look at ourselves in the mirror and go, wow, I am actually in this organism. So how can I bring pleasure to my mind and my body and my soul by interacting with this organism, because I'm inside it and it is inside me, and vice versa.
I love that. This has been an incredible podcast. There's a lot of depth to you, and I fucking really love that. I'm very open to doing another one in the future with you if you'd come on again. But this has been incredible. Thank you, Lilly, for amazing answers, amazing content, amazing value. If someone was watching or listening, and wanted to get in touch, reach out, interested in your services, learning more, just connecting with you and just saying thank you, where can they find you?
Yeah, definitely. I'm very active on Instagram, which is just Lilly Anjuli on Instagram. I also have a website, which is www.lillyanjuli.com.au.
Very nice.
And they are the best forms of contacts for me. And also my email address, which is lillyanjuli32@gmail.com.
I love that. To finish this off, what impact do you want to leave on this world?
I want people to get to know themselves to a point where it changes absolutely everything that they believe, question everything that they are, and drive them to be more than they could ever possibly imagine.
I fucking love that. Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening, guys, making it all the way to the end of the podcast. If you got value from this, please connect with both of us. We'd love to hear some feedback, and share this to a friend. Imagine that if you send it to one person, they took one thing out of this and improved the quality of their life. Thank you so much, guys. I'll see you on the very next episode.